Well, it happened. After 14 mostly fabulous seasons, the final curtain closed on the Real Housewives of New Jersey. And I think the fact that they led into this episode with the old Teresa table flip episode was a very strategic move on Bravo's part. I think they did it to show Teresa and her tree stumps that Teresa's bad behavior is nothing new. And definitely not Melissa's fault. Definitely not Marge's fault. That's just who Teresa is. It's who she's always been, at her core. I mean, she tossed Christopher Manzo in that table flipping scene the same way she tossed Andy a few years later at that reunion. I mean, Bravo could have led into this episode with anything, but they chose the table flip. And I think it was all in an effort to prove that Teresa is today who she's always been. And that Louis, who Andy clearly doesn't love, has really only made things worse. So the show starts and we're at rails again. The women are split into two separate rooms, and for the sake of keeping things clear, we'll call it Team Teresa and Team Sanity. Everyone is dressed very differently. Marge is the first to arrive. She gets put back in that mosaic room. Then Dolores walks in, and she joins Teresa and Jennifer in the other room. Jennifer looks at Dolores and says, "Oh, good, you chose the right room." And Dolores says, "Of course, where else would I go? And I don't know, maybe into the room where you like actually more than one person?" Because let's be clear, Dolores doesn't really like Jennifer or Danielle. Her only tie to that room is Teresa. Meanwhile, she loves everyone on Team Sanity. Jackie goes on to say that she is not looking forward to watching the finale, she is not trashing people today, and she is not participating in any type of toxicity. Teresa goes on to say that at the beginning of the season, Jen Fessler had her own thoughts, but since everything wrapped, she's made it clear that she is no longer Team Teresa, and Teresa is sure that it's only because Margaret got in her ear. Jen Fessler is the final cast member to arrive. The producers give her the option to go into either room, and she chooses Team Sanity. But when she walks in, the vibe is a little weird because she still has some outstanding beef with Danielle and with Rachel. And before Jen can even settle in, Danielle comes for her. But Jen fires back. Fessler says, "You need to calm down. If I wanted to sit in a room with snakes, I'd go to the other room and sit with snakes." Then she looks at Danielle and says, "Listen, after watching the season, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have defended Jen." And Danielle says, "That's all I wanted to hear." So now those two are square, and now Rachel goes in. She says, "Listen, I don't hate you, but I was just so hurt this season about so many things." She said, "I was fully into our friendship, but I didn't feel like that about you after what I saw this season." And Fessler, like a big girl, says, "Listen, me hugging her doesn't mean that I love you any less." Then they all hugged it out and all was well. They open with the scene at Margaret's house when she's there with Jen Fessler waiting for Dolores to arrive. And that's when we see little Bella, Margaret's now dead dog. And Dolores makes a real point to tell Team Teresa how losing that dog was so hard for Margaret. Then we're watching the scene where Margaret asks Dolores how the burn session went. Dolores says it wasn't a burn session, and this is where we're leading into that big brawl. The one where Dolores goes code 3 crazy. And while Margaret is on screen spitting facts and dates about her timeline with Vanessa, Teresa's about to shake her head off her shoulders. No, that's not true. She's lying. Turns and nudges Jackie. "You know she's lying, right?" Jackie says, "Oh yeah, she spoke to her tons." On screen, Dolores and Margaret are talking about that pre-reunion meeting, right at the point where Margaret says to Dolores, "I did invite you." Then Dolores turns to Teresa again with this weird energy and says, "See right there? That part was a lie." Back on the screen, Dolores is going off the rails and Teresa is beaming like a proud mother. Teresa's smiling and says, "I've never seen you so mad." And Dolores looks at her with this weird look and goes, like such a loyal lieutenant. Back on the screen, Dolores is still losing her shit, and all the women on Team Sanity are wondering why. Then Margaret very calmly says, she must have told them that she didn't know about it. Back at Team Teresa, Dolores very seriously turns to Teresa and says, "Do you think I was invited to this thing?" And Teresa says, "No, absolutely not. I believe that you weren't invited." And Dolores says, "Yeah, because you know that I don't get like that for nothing." And even after the scene was over, no one could explain Dolores' over-the-top behavior. Well, no one except Marge. And then Dolores tells Team Teresa that she's now going to go upstairs and check on Marge, because she must be upset about the dead dog. Dolores walks upstairs and Melissa questions her about why she got so upset. Dolores said that she felt like it made her look like a liar, and Melissa said, "Oh, they didn't know you were invited?" And she said, "It was never a conversation." Then Dolores exits, and after she's gone, Fessler tells Team Sanity that she hasn't spoken to Teresa or Jen since all that evidence came out on social media that they were involved with leaking stories. When Teresa hears Melissa say that Louis' niece came up to her at a restaurant to warn her about her uncle. Teresa says, I'm gonna tell little Louis about the things his cousin is saying about his dad. Then it's the scene where Teresa and Louis are in their bathroom and he's asking her how she plans to navigate around Margaret. And when he gets to the part where he says, I hope Margaret and her family suffers. I hope her son suffers. You can see everyone's face just fall on the floor. Dolores says, Teresa, Louis gonna get a lot of shit for that. And Teresa goes, what? Dolores said, for what he said about Margaret's son. And Teresa goes, I don't care. My kids suffered. My stepson suffered. My daughter suffered. Dolores says, it was wrong, Teresa. I can't stand here and defend him all the time like I do and not at least tell you that that is wrong. Teresa is clearly rattled and says to Dolores, don't you dare stand up for her. Dolores is clearly very frustrated, and she even refers back to last season when she let Louis off the hook with that whole Frankie Jr. situation. Back at Team Sanity, Melissa says that comment from Louis is one of the lowest things that she has ever heard on the show. You hear Melissa's white trash comment, and Teresa says, well, if she's calling me white trash, then she's calling her husband white trash. But let's face it, we know that those two are not the same. And truth be told, being white trash isn't even about your blood. It's about your behavior. Now we're watching Teresa watch Marge, who's talking about that pre-reunion meeting. And Teresa's going, it wasn't a meeting, it was a smear campaign. Teresa says to Jackie, look at Margaret, she's getting nervous. Then we're watching the part where Margaret dropped the bomb about Jackie inviting Vanessa over. It's all that warrior video stuff. Marge is spitting hard facts and Jackie is panicked, turning to Teresa, that's not how it happened. Teresa turns to Jackie and says, don't worry, I get it. I know I hurt you first. Then we cut to the scene where Melissa in confessional says there was just no resolution for anyone. And Teresa pipes up and says, no, I have closure. I feel vindicated. Back at Team Sanity, Rachel asks Jen Fessler how she now feels about Jackie given the fact that they're so close. Jen says that it's hard, no doubt, but that she loves Jackie. And Margaret pipes up and says, I have no regrets. Margaret says she doesn't feel like she did anything wrong this season. Fessler said that she felt like she moved through the season authentically, but Danielle said that she did have regrets. Having Jen Aiden in her home, around her kids. Jackie asked Teresa if she could ever see a way forward with Margaret, and Teresa said that she would have to grovel, admit everything, and apologize because she has just caused them so much grief over the last 4 years. And then we have some parting words. Teresa says, I've been going through this with my sister-in-law for so many years, but now the truth came out and I feel vindicated. And now I'm sitting with the people I belong with. Marge calls the finale the final blow of good versus evil. Dolores says that this is no longer a group of friends, that the division can never be mended, and where things are where things are gonna stay. Back at Team Sanity, Melissa raises a glass and says there's still a lot of life to be had. And Rachel says, yeah, considering the fact that I'm pregnant, and all of the women go wild. Danielle says, that's a wrap. Under her breath, Dolores says, I hope not for good. What did you think? How do you feel? Comment below and let me